Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. It's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker at the Europe Center at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies here at Stanford University. Today, our speaker is, with great pleasure, His Serene Highness Prince Hans-Adam II of Liechtenstein. His Highness is the eldest son of Prince Franz Joseph II von und zu Liechtenstein and Princess Tina. His education, he was educated in Vienna and at the University of St. Gallen with an advanced degree in management and economics. I note that his regency he assumed on the 13th of November 1989. In terms of policy, he has dedicated his reign to bringing Liechtenstein into the modern international community. Under his leadership, Liechtenstein has joined the United Nations and the European Economic Area with the European Union. In his research and writing, Prince Hans-Adam has especially studied the concepts, purposes, and limitations of the state. Today we host His Highness to discuss subjects related to his publication, which you saw in the lobby, The State in the Third Millennium. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to His Serene Highness Prince Hans-Adam II.
Ladies and gentlemen, will the state survive the third millennium? That is a question I asked myself very early on, when I started to analyze my future carefully. During the time when I was a student of economics and law back in the 1960s, as I was supposed to become a monarch of a mini-state. According to the prevailing wisdom at that time, even now, monarchies and mini-states like the Principality of Liechtenstein should have disappeared at least a century ago. Does humanity at all wish to have a state in the third millennium? Is it not possible to realize finally the old utopia of a society without the state? The rejection of every form of government is widely known by the Greek term anarchia, which was originally a peaceful movement based on private ownership. Looking into the future on how the state might evolve in the third millennium, we should not ignore our past. Human history is to a large extent a history of wars, persecutions, and destruction. In the 20th century, a high point was reached with millions of people killed in 2 world wars, in civil wars, and in concentration camps all over the world. By the end of this century, technologies might be available which could destroy all human life here on planet Earth. Globalization, science, and technology fortunately cause not only problems, but also offer humanity a huge opportunity to solve its problems. The challenge for the third millennium will be to develop and to implement a state model which fulfills the following conditions. First, a state model which prevents wars between states as well as civil wars. Second, a state model which serves not only a privileged section of the population, but which serves the whole population inside the state. Third, a state model which offers the people a maximum of democracy and the rule of law. And fourth, a state model which is geared to the competition of the age of globalization. Those goals can only be reached if the state is seen as an organization which has to serve the people and not the other way around. The state has to become a service company which competes peacefully and not a monopoly which gives the customer only the alternative either to accept a bad service at the highest price or to emigrate. For the large majority of the people, emigration is hardly possible because the possibilities for immigration have been drastically reduced. The alternative for many desperate and hopeless people is not emigration, but violence, terrorism, revolution, and civil war. Even in democratic constitutional states, there are again and again minorities who, rightly or wrongly, feel themselves disadvantaged. One need only to think of Northern Ireland, the Basque Country, South Tyrol, Quebec, or the Aboriginal populations of Australia, North and South America. As a young man, I was very impressed how Switzerland had solved the minority problem in the canton of Bern. The canton of Bern is not only one of the largest and most important cantons of Switzerland, but Bern is also the capital of Switzerland. In the Jura region of the canton, the French-speaking Catholics felt politically and economically disadvantaged compared to the German Protestant majority of Bern. The French-speaking population aspired to greater autonomy for the Jura region, but they met with resistance from the German-speaking majority. The conflict escalated, there were bomb attacks, and radical elements wanted Jura to become part of France. The confederal Swiss government intervened in the internal cantonal problem and mediated a solution in 1974. The French-speaking region of the canton of Bern voted for Jura to become its own canton. The decision was supported by a clear majority, although some French-speaking communities chose to remain in the canton of Bern. Over the years, the political and economic developments in Jura exceeded expectations, and several French-speaking communities that had remained with Bern decided to join the canton of Jura. This peaceful and democratic solution after such violent conflict was for me an impressive example of a successful experiment in self-determination at the local level. A state model which is to secure peace, the rule of law, democracy, and the welfare of the population has to withdraw from the state the monopoly on its territory. The emigration of the population is only a realistic alternative in our world if the affected population can emigrate with their territory. In order to realize it, the political units with the right of self-determination have to be very small. I was able to introduce the right of self-determination on a local level in the Liechtenstein constitution through a popular vote. Each of our 11 communities in Liechtenstein has the right to renounce its membership in the principality and become an independent state or join another state if the majority of the population in the community decides so. The larger the political units with the right of self-determination, whether they are called provinces, federal states or cantons, the greater the danger that they will leave the state. The greater also is the danger that inside the new states there will be minorities who are discriminated against and who will one day defend themselves violently. The breakup of Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, the colonial empires, also the Austrian-Hungarian Empire clearly shows the problems when those units are too large. The smallest political unit in most states, which are more or less defined politically and territorially, are the local communities like villages and cities. In the past, local communities were sometimes divided, like the city of Berlin, but it is questionable if that makes much sense. There is much to be said for treating local communities as political units which should not be divided territorially any further. A community can consist of a village with a few hundred inhabitants and a few square kilometers, or of a large city with several million inhabitants and several thousand square kilometers. In a local community, disadvantaged minorities can also emerge if the majority of the population votes to withdraw from the existing state. Usually, such minorities are better integrated in their community, and emigration to a neighboring community is easier. In a small community, it will always be very difficult to convince the majority of the population that the withdrawal from the existing state is the right solution. Let's take a glimpse into a distant future when the states of this world have become service companies which are in peaceful competition for their potential customers. There the customer is king and can choose. Just as he can choose today if he wants to buy his hamburger at McDonald's or Burger King or fry it himself, or what airlines he wants to fly with, or if he prefers to travel by car. In such a world, the state will not waste taxpayers' money on defense anymore, as it is already the case for a number of small states where an army means not additional security but additional expenses. What are the duties left to the state in the third millennium which cannot be solved better and cheaper by private enterprise or by the communities themselves? In my opinion, only foreign policy, law and order, education, and state finances remain with the state. All the other duties can be fulfilled better and cheaper on the level of the communities or by private enterprise. I will not deal with foreign policy, as this matter will probably also in the future be very different from state to state because of geography, history, and other reasons. For the vast majority of the population, the most important task of the state is to give them legal protection or law and order. For having law and order and legal protection, most people are willing to pay a high price, either financially or by giving up some of their freedom and political rights. When anarchy looms, the call for the strong man or the dictator follows, who is then supposed to rule with an iron fist. Whoever wants to have democracy and the rule of law will see that the maintenance of law and order is by far the most important task of a state, long before all the other tasks which have been taken over by the state today. In order for the democratic constitutional state to function, the following institutions have to cooperate: the police, the public prosecution, the courts, and the legislature. In my remarks, I